Good morning, all of you. Welcome to the channel. So let's start with today's analysis video for 15th of June 2023. So on the first page, the retaliatory strike by the village guards leaves 9 dead in Manipur. So the dead were part of a mob which had been targeting villages over the past 3 days, and mobile towers, they were blown up, roads, they were blocked, according to the police. So situation is basically, we can say, getting tense in the state of Manipur, and we are not seeing the results of the steps being taken in order to restore the peace situation. So here, what is the role of the union government? What does the constitution says about the role of the union government in terms of whenever there is internal disturbance in any state in India? So you need to find out about the background of it. Then Gujarat on alert with cyclone Biparjoy set to make a landfall today. So here all the preparatory actions, they have been taken by the state government or by the union government. Then what all steps are a part of the preparatory steps that have been taken, you need to know about them, and we have already discussed them. So that's why I'm not repeating that thing again and again. And after the cyclone, what would be the steps that would be taken by the government in order to give relief to the people who will suffer, or the areas that will suffer, get affected by this cyclone. And then I've already told you what are the climatic conditions which leads to the formation of cyclone. Why do we have less number of tropical cyclones in Arabian Sea compared to Bay of Bengal? This is also one area. So that's there. So here, Tamil Nadu minister have been arrested by ED and remanded in the judicial custody. So a question have already been asked about the difference between judicial custody and the police custody. So here, another important area is that Tamil Nadu state, it withdraws the consent to CBI. So there's a general consent thing which is given by states to CBI. So the state government, it has decided to withdraw this general consent to CBI to carry out the investigations in the state. Now, if this general consent has been withdrawn, it means whenever there would be any CBI investigation would have to be carried out in Tamil Nadu. So it would have to take permission from the state government every single time as per the cases. And in terms of general consent is that if a state government has given the general consent to CBI, so need not take permission every single time. So it's kind of a universal permission you have given to CBI to carry out the investigations in a particular state. So we talk about so much of e-governance. So here we have a list of faceless services. And here, this is in the context of the Haryana Shahri Vikas Pradhikaran. It launches the faceless services. So what are different types of services that have been launched? You can transfer the permission letter online, non-due certificate, non-incomplete certificate. Likewise, they've been made available. So it would be accessible 24/7. User-friendly interface has been created. You get services at no additional cost except the administrative charges, and there's no need to visit the estate office right now. Obviously, now you can access things from your home and you can avail the services from anywhere now. So we are again seeing that farmers are on roads in the state of Haryana. They blocked the Rohtak-Delhi highway over a slew of demands. So they have been basically on roads. They've been protesting. Firstly, they are supporting the wrestlers' cause. And apart from that, few days back, we also saw that they were blocking the road in Kurukshetra. They blocked the National Highway 44 because of their demands regarding the MSP. So they said that the MSP increase, it's like a very small amount that has been increased. So that is not going to actually help and aid the farmers much. So there were some demands regarding the MSP guarantee, and they are saying that you need to legalize MSP. Right now, it is not a part of law, or it is not a legal guarantee. So these are some of the demands which forms the part of farmers' demands. So here it is in more detail about Tamil Nadu withdraws the general consent that is being granted to the CBI. So agency will now have to seek prior permission from the state government for the investigations. So obviously, as I told you, that they'll have to take permission from the state every single time as per the case. And decision this comes after the arrest of Tamil Nadu electricity minister by the ED. So permission that have been denied to CBI, basically the states which have withdrawn or they do not permit the general consent to CBI, it includes all these states. You can just go through them. It is like not so very important for us to remember this list. You just need to know the meaning. And then when we talk about CBI, so it was basically formed under the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act. So CBI has been formed as per this act. And so basically, it allows the agency to investigate the cases without its permission in the state if you have, like if a particular state has given general consent to it. So that's there. Coming to the editorial page. So the next Finance Commission will have a tough task. So firstly, which constitutional article talks about Finance Commission and what is actually the role of Finance Commission in general terms, you need to know about that, and at least the recommendations of the past two Finance Commission. So the government, it will appoint a finance commission in the next few months to determine how much of the center's tax revenue should be given away to the states. So this is known as the vertical sharing. That is, we call it as the financial devolution of funds to the states. And then it would be also recommending about how to distribute that even like between different states. So that is the horizontal sharing formula. So in the pre-reform period, basically talking about before 1991, so the Finance Commission recommendations were not that critical because center had other ways to compensate the states back then, like before 1991. But post reforms, fresh PSU investments, they have thinned out, and the planning commission that was abolished in 2014, with the result that finance commission, it remains virtually the sole architect of India's fiscal federalism. So its responsibility and its influence, they are therefore much larger in today's context. So issue will be about the horizontal distribution. So currently the center gives away 41% of its tax pool to the states, and then this 41% is distributed among different states. So it is not equally distributed between different states. So that is the issue. So what are the bases on the basis of which you are taking the decision to decide the finances becomes a little complicated, and then different states protest accordingly. So for sure, states, they will demand that this proportion, it needs to be raised, but I do not see much room for stretching this further given the center's expenditure needs and the constraints on its borrowing limit. So that is a one constraint in front of center as well. So therefore, much of the debate will center on the horizontal distribution formula now. So when the previous finance commission, it was appointed in 2017. So a finance commission is appointed for 5 years. So its terms of reference, that became quite contentious because it was asked to take into account 2011 population figures in determining the expenditure needs of the state. So when it was like a topic of debate. So basically, the the southern states, they were protesting because it was being said that the higher the number of population or higher the number of people living in a particular state, so they would be getting more amount of fund. So this was basically the South Indian states, they had been successful in controlling the population and they did not see the situation of population explosion. So although that was what was the need of the hour, what was the demand, but despite this successful effort, they are basically being punished in a way and not being rewarded. So that was one topic of debate back then. So earlier, 1971 population numbers, they were used. So that's why 2011 population figures, they become a debate. So a similar conflict arises with regard to the revenue deficit grants that the Finance Commission awards to states, which remain in deficit on the current account even after tax devolution. So this is another terms of reference. So in theory, the revenue deficit grants, they have a neat rationale that every state in a country should be able to provide a minimum level of service to its residents, even if it involves an element of cross subsidization. So the worry is that this too has become a perverse incentive. So why bother raising the revenues on your own when the Finance Commission will compensate you? So this is basically in a way hampering the states, I would say their states' finances, because what goes in the mind of the state government is that when the central government is providing you the funds, then why you have to take so much of efforts in order to reduce the revenue deficit? So that is basically in a way not a progressive thing or not obviously progressive thinking. So historically, finance commissions, they have struggled to determine how much a state's deficit is due to its fiscal incapacity and how much is due to the fiscal irresponsibility. So very important statement. So definitely there's minute difference between fiscal incapacity and fiscal irresponsibility. So obviously, if a state is fiscally irresponsible, then it is not adequate or it wouldn't be good to compensate that particular state, because then it would further boost this kind of attitude. So they have tried to tweak the distribution formula to support the deficit states without penalizing the responsible states, and a mathematically impossible task since you cannot give more to a state without giving less to another. So that's actually a very difficult task to decide the formula. And these fault lines across the states, they have in fact deepened in recent years along the political, economic, and fiscal dimensions. So the bottom line, though, is that it is in the very nature of the horizontal distribution that the richer states, they compensate the poorer states. And how to ensure that this happens without deepening the divide will challenge the government in defining the terms of reference of the Finance Commission and of the Finance Commission itself in delivering on those terms of reference. Then, apart from this, you need to know that which all taxes, they do not form a part of this central pool. So it includes cesses and the surcharges. So the terms of reference of the Finance Commission enjoin it to take into account the expenditure needs and the revenue earning capacity of both the center and states. So the author says that I believe the forthcoming Finance Commission should use this leverage to focus on two issues in particular. So the first issue is the egregious practice by the center of increasingly resorting to a levy of cess and surcharges rather than raising the taxes. So since cess and surcharges, they do not form a part of this financial devolution, so he says that central government needs to, shift away their attention from cess and surcharge, and rather than you need to you can increase the tax rate. And also, white paper was released by the state of Tamil Nadu government a couple of years ago, which pointed out that the proportion of cess and surcharge in the center's total tax revenue, it had nearly doubled from 10%, which was in 2011-12. And right now it stands at 20% in 2019-20. So since the tax revenue which the government is getting from cess and surcharges, that has basically doubled. So obviously the amount of fund that the government would be releasing in the form of the financial or the fiscal devolution to the states, that would have basically decreased. But we cannot basically we can't be so sure about this. But again, definitely if the share of cess and the surcharge, that has doubled. So that is basically seeing we can either say that you can incorporate the tax revenues from cess and surcharge, or you need to basically shift your attention away from it. So there is a perverse incentive in operation here. So the straightforward option for raising the revenues is to raise the taxes, but if the center it does not, it does that, it has to part with 41 paise to the states. And then on the other hand, if it raises the additional rupee by a way of surcharge, it gets to keep all of it. So then the second issue is about restraint on the freebies. So the second issue of focus for the Finance Commission, it should be the government spending on what has come to be called as the freebies. So all political parties, they are guilty on this count. Some are more than others, but they're trying to portion the blame will be a wrong start. So in a poor country where millions of households, they struggle for the basic human needs, it sounds cruel to argue against the safety nets for the poor, but it is precisely because India is a poor country that we need to be more circumspect about the freebies. Because then even this kind of culture would be promoting the negative attitudes amongst the poor people then. And in theory, the restraints that have been imposed by this FRBM Act, it should have acted as a check on such populist spending by the governments, found ingenious ways of raising the debt without it appearing in the budget books. So it's not easy to unambiguously define a freebie, and obviously that even a freebie can be interpreted in several ways. So any check on this will be contested as infringing on the sovereignty of the elected governments. So even this is one of the angles which is like logical. So nevertheless, the next finance commission, it should bite the bullet in the interest of the long-term fiscal sustainability and lay down guidelines on the spending on freebies. So that will embolden the Finance Commission to formalize a mechanism for a restraint on the freebie. So here it's been talked about. So in like basically state assembly elections to be held later this year, the Prime Minister should walk the talk and invest his political capital to show that the promise of good governance can trump the lure of freebies. So this is basically talking about the Karnataka election. Talking about inflation, it should not be allowed to erode the purchasing power of the poor. So obviously, as we say that higher is the inflation rate, so higher the degree of erosion, the purchasing power of the people. So the pace of retail inflation, it is slowed down to a 25-month low. So that is definitely positive, and we are moving towards a comfortable situation as of now. So headline inflation extended its deaccelerating trend for the fourth month in some measure, validating the RBI's decision to pause the monetary tightening till it could assess actually the impact of past interest rate increases. Because even like transmission of the impact because of increase in the repo rate, or when you say that the we have been maintaining the status quo, so even that has some time lag, so even that is being assessed by RBI. So in the coming times also, RBI is cautious about how inflation is going to tread, because we are having some concerns that there is a possibility that inflation might start climbing up again because of the food shortage, because we are expecting an El Nino this year. So that is one concern. So strengthening the ICDS scheme, so it's a very, very important scheme. So notwithstanding the contention regarding the assessment methods of the various global surveys, it is true that India's high prevalence of stunting, wasting, anemia, it continues to pose the public health risk for children and women. So India must strengthen the existing social sector schemes like the integrated child development services to tackle this. So ICDS, it targets that children which are aged between 0 to 6 years, pregnant women and lactating mothers, addresses the non-formal preschool education, and breaks the cycle of malnutrition, morbidity, and mortality. So some empirical research, they highlight the correlation between early life poverty, malnutrition, and inadequate stimulation and later cognitive and economic challenges. So definitely there is a linkage between the two, and studies, they have shown that interventions focusing on nutrition, education, and health during early childhood can significantly improve the human capital, particularly in the developing countries. So our focus needs to be here, and definitely ICDS is focusing here as well, but we need to make it much more aligned. So as we commend the remarkable strides made by ICDS, it is imperative to acknowledge the pressing need for a thorough reassessment of our approaches. So despite 4 decades of the relentless efforts, the ICDS still faces the Herculean task of ameliorating the nutritional and the health outcomes of children aged between 0 to 6 years. So some reforms definitely are needed, and a significant first step towards fortifying the program is to empower Anganwadi workers. So this can be one part of one reforms, and though the cornerstone of the ICDS, they are frequently stretched beyond their limits. So as principal operators on the Portion 2.0 initiative, which is basically the midday meal scheme, these workers, they bear the onus of advancing the child nutrition, health, and education in their communities. So their roles, they vary widely from employing the modern technology like smartphones and applications to practical tasks like delivering the health education, managing feeding programs, and liaising with auxiliary nurse, midwives, and other healthcare professionals. So definitely their role is important. So they need to be empowered much more. So advantages of more workers. So an additional Anganwadi worker could be added to each of India's right now like 13,99,661 Anganwadi centers to lessen the load of these workers also, because they have to like manage between a lot of things. As you can see, they've been mentioned over here, their role which they play. So we can like work upon employing or taking in more of Anganwadi workers. So implementing this approach could yield at least 5 advantages. So they've been listed here. So the first one can be that it could lead to better health and education outcomes. A large-scale randomized control trial, which was conducted in Tamil Nadu, it was like conducted to evaluate the effects of increasing the staff levels within the ICDS. So it revealed significant outcomes. So addition of a half-time worker effectively doubled the net preschool instructional time, which led to improvements in math and language test scores. Second advantage would be that children who remained enrolled also exhibited reduced rates of child stunting and severe malnutrition. Third advantage would be the cost of a nationwide rollout of this model is relatively insignificant in comparison to the potential advantage it offers. So the estimated long-term benefits, they are based on the expected improvements in the lifetime earnings. They would be around 13 to 21 times the expenses. So the fourth advantage would be that new Anganwadi workers, they can be given the responsibility of concentrating only on the preschool and early childhood education, because right now they're engaged in a lot of number of things. So you can decide their role and restrict it to a particular thing to, enhance the efficiency and definitely the outcomes also. Fifth advantage would be that apart from improving the well-being of the rural communities, this would create job opportunities for the local residents, particularly the women. So the operationalization of the Saksham Anganwadi and Portion 2.0 proposal hinges on its status as a centrally sponsored scheme. So state governments oversee its execution, including the administration, management, and monitoring. So the basically recruitment of the Anganwadi workers falls under the state's jurisdiction, which is guided by regulations and region-specific criteria. So this decentralized approach, it promotes tailored, efficient implementation, and Government of India provides funds for the Anganwadi workers and helpers honorariums on a cost-sharing basis. So we've also seen that there are significant variations in implementation of ICDS and the level of skills of Anganwadi workers. So even this is one of the issues, and definitely this requires further investments in training program. Then exigencies for the infrastructural improvement in the Anganwadi centers, even that cannot be overstated. So we need to take care about their functional sanitation facilities and ensure that there is access and availability of potable water. So to unlock the ICDS full potential and address the persistent issues, it is essential to revisit and reevaluate its strategies and implementation. So empowering Anganwadi workers is just a start. So one of the fallouts of Russia-Ukraine war is the Eurozone in recession. So we've been talking about how the Germany's economy is performing. So it is being said that is it really heading towards a recession or not? So here we're talking about the complete Eurozone. So economic output, it shrunk by 0.1% in the first quarter, while unemployment hit the lowest since the group's formation. So recession blues, here we have the data about that from World Bank and OECD. So chart one is talking about the percentage change over the previous quarter in GDP at market prices for the Eurozone. So it is said that if the GDP it contracts for 2 consecutive quarters, then we can say that an economy is in recession. So that is true in case of Germany. So the previous instance when the Eurozone it faced recession was in 2020 quarter two. So basically you can see that 2 quarters they recorded negative GDP growth. So it was basically the beginning of COVID-19 pandemic. And again, here you can see 2 consecutive quarters of contraction of GDP growth, but the amount of contraction is very, very low. It's minus 0.1%, but still it fulfills the conditions. So that why we can't overlook it. So right now also we can say that it is in recession. So here we are having the graphs for different economies, Germany, Ireland, France, and Italy. So it talks about the percentage change over the previous quarter in GDP at the market prices for select countries. So here it's for GDP, you can see the amount of volatility. In Ireland, it is much higher than again in Italy and France. So all these economies are in a way heading towards a recession. And chart 3 talks about the month-wise overall inflation and inflation for food, gas, and electricity. So you can see the gas prices are so high and electricity is also at high, food is also at high, all are on an upward trend. Although gas prices, they have slided down very sharply, even electricity prices. But definitely even inflation is one of the cause of concerns. So the status of transgenic crops in India, it's a very, very important topic. So what are the different processes to regulate them in India? Why did states like Gujarat, Maharashtra, Telangana, they defer the proposal to test this variety of cotton? What is the next move of the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee, which looks into the regulation and approvals? And how long before there is a greater acceptance for testing the genetically modified crops? So 3 states, Gujarat, Maharashtra, and Telangana, they have deferred a proposal which was approved by the GEAC to test a new kind of transgenic cotton seed that contains this gene Cry2AI that purportedly makes cotton resistant to pink bollworm, which is a major pest which affects the cotton crop. So this conflict shows that a broad acceptance of genetically modified crops, it continues to be elusive. So what is the status of transgenic crops in India right now? So there are an array of crops like brinjal, tomato, maize, and chickpea in various states of trials that employ the transgenic technology. So right now they are in the stages of trials. So cotton, it remains only transgenic crop that is being commercially cultivated in India right now. So after the long hiatus, the GEC, which is the apex technical body charged with evaluating the proposals for testing the genetically modified seeds, it approved the environmental release of mustard hybrid DMH11 and its parental lines. But again, this was also debated when this approval was given by the GEAC. So this is one step away from the full commercial cultivation, but again, even this is facing hurdles because obviously farmers, they can't so easily accept them. So that's there. So the GEC, it is it's under the Environment Ministry, isn't the final arbiter in case of the GM crops. So there's a long-standing litigation in the Supreme Court on the permissibility of allowing the transgenic food crops in farmer fields based on petitions that have been filed. And following the GEC approval of this variety of crop for the mustard variety, so the petitioners, they approached the apex court asking for a stay on the release of the crop because it would encourage farmers to spray herbicides which are banned in India. So hearings on this case, they are still ongoing. And in 2017 GC, it had accorded a clearance for the GM mustard, but it went back on its decision and imposed additional test. So basically right now we can say that we are in a state of confusion. We're not having so much of clarity or a proper defined process for that, because here we're seeing GEC even that is changing its stance. And in 2010, then it had approved the GM brinjal, but this was put on an indefinite moratorium by the United Progressive Alliance government. So there are several hurdles. It's not that the GAC gives the approval and the task is done. There's government political opposition also, then people they go and file petitions in the judiciary. So everywhere it needs an approval. So what is the process of regulating these transgenic crops in India? Talking about the regulation, so the process of developing them is an elaborate one, as inserting the transgenic genes into the plants to elicit a sustained protective response. It's a mix of both the science and chance. So there are multiple safety assessments which are done by the committees before they are cleared for further test in open plots of lands. So different safety tests they are carried out, and so they are like the trials on the fields they are carried out, which are controlled by the Indian Council for Agricultural Research. And then for the commercial clearance, it gets it only after it has proven to be demonstrably better than comparable non-GM varieties or the variants on claimed parameters like drought, what is the degree of drought tolerance, insect resistance, without posing any ecological harm to other species. So open field trials, they often take place over multiple crop seasons and types of geographical conditions also to assess its suitability across different states in India. So even this factor is also taken into account. So why are these three states, they are like opposing the GAC approval for this variety of cotton? So here, the cotton seed is being developed by the Hyderabad-based Bioseed Research India. So the first generation, the transgenic crop had been developed to inure the cotton against a more widespread pest, which was called the American bollworm. So here these states, we see agriculture being a state subject in most of the cases. The companies which are interested in testing their seeds, they need approvals from states for conducting such tests. So only Haryana gave the permission for this test of this type of variety for cotton. And apart from that, Telangana completely denied carrying out of the trials, and Gujarat, it also like responded to the proposal was called unacceptable to them, but it did not furnish the reasons for that. So are there changes in the offing in process of regulation, the GM crops or not? So this committee, which is the genetically engineered appraisal committee, consists of a panel of plant biotechnologist, and it is headed by a senior official of Environment Ministry, and it is co-chaired by the scientist of the Department of Biotechnology. So to resolve the issue of states not according approvals on testing because of the differing attitudes or to the GM crops, so this committee is considering a proposal by the DBT to declare some regions across India as notified testing sites so that you don't require the approval of state governments. So there are 42 such proposed sites, and if it goes through the companies wanting to conduct the trials of the GM crops at these locations, they won't need the permission, the states for trials. But again, there is another issue here that because agriculture is a state subject, so you are basically overpassing the powers of the state governments. And is it really violation of federalism or not then? So why did the government impose a ceiling on the wheat stock? So we know about the wheat prices, they are soaring, and that is a way through which government can basically control or aid in bringing down the cereal inflation. So has there been a decline in the production of wheat in the country or not? How is it going to manage the overall food security? And will it stabilize the price of the essential commodity and prevent unscrupulous speculation? So going by the gist, Union government it has imposed limits on the stock of wheat that can be held by traders, wholesalers, retailers, big chain retailers, and processors. So motive is to stabilize the prices, and traders and wholesalers, they can hold this much. limitations they have been mentioned. So agricultural ministry estimates the production of wheat at record 1127.43 lakh metric tons by the agriculture year 2022-23. So that is one of the ways through which government can help in aiding bringing down the cereal inflation. So we can just, go about the production levels. So notwithstanding the warnings from the experts about the potential effects of El Nino, so the agricultural ministry it estimates the production of wheat at a record amount for the agriculture year 2022-23, which is higher by 50 lakh metric tons from the previous production. So optimism is premised around the increased area of wheat sowed and the better yield. So talking about the Uniform Civil Code, it is mentioned in Article 44. So Law Commission seeks fresh inputs on Uniform Civil Code. So the 22nd Law Commission, it sought for fresh suggestions from various stakeholders like public and religious organizations on UCC. So the previous 21st Law Commission, it had also examined the subject and solicited the views of the stakeholders through its appeal. So it also issued a consultation paper about the reforms of the family law. And so the commission said that since more than 3 years they have lapsed from the date of issuance of the said consultation paper, bearing in mind the relevance and the importance of the subject and also the various court orders, so the 22nd Law Commission considered it expedient to deliberate afresh over the subject. So people can share their views with the Law Commission by writing to them. So right now, basically, they are deliberating on the subject. So Union government moves new HDI, the Human Development Index, for 28 lakh vulnerable tribals. So the survey is part of the center's development mission to connect remote tribal groups to government services. So a separate index for them is being formulated. So that we can obviously get a much more clear idea about their actual situation. So it will be specifically for the about 28 lakh people of the particularly vulnerable tribal groups living in around 22,000 villages across the country. So they would be collecting information about the changes in their lives and document it and simply put. So there would be basically collection of database about this. And then you can find out about different schemes that have been launched by government in order to ensure the welfare of PVTGs or the vulnerable sections. So news consumption falls in India as per a study. So Reuters Institute Digital News Report finds that a sharp decrease in access to online news while television too sees a decline as a news source. So globally, platforms like TikTok, they are gaining ground as sources of news among the youth, and trend of news avoidance continues in many countries. So this is kind of a new topic, news avoidance. So news consumption trust declines. So access to the online news resources, you can see the amount of decline, and people are now basically relying more on the social media platforms to basically as the sources of news. Coming to the world page. So here, so no NATO entry for Sweden unless anti-Turkish protests they stop. So there's an issue going on between Sweden and Turkey. So that's there. And apart from this, you need to know about the member countries of NATO. Latest entrant has been Finland, and even Sweden wants to enter NATO. So China is a partner, competitor, and systematic rival, says the German security strategy. So Trump pleads not guilty to charges of the classified papers, and 26 dead after the army and rebels they clash in Myanmar. So we need to be aware about situation in these different countries. China wants strategic ties with Palestine. So you can imagine that where all China is basically trying to gain ground. So global changes, facing century of global changes and new developments to the situation in Middle East, China is ready to strengthen the coordination and cooperation with Palestinian side. So this can obviously further escalate the things because USA supports Israel. And now if China is saying that it want to strengthen its relationship and want to coordinate and cooperate with Palestinian side, obviously here would be another indirect conflict between US and China. So today we will jointly announce the establishment of a China-Palestine strategic partnership, which will be an important milestone in the history of bilateral relations. So Beijing has sought to boost its ties in West Asia, challenging US influence, efforts that have sparked unease in Washington, and even the rise of China or its growing presence in different areas and different bodies. So USA has decided to re-enter UNESCO, which it left earlier. Coming to the business page here, the in the month of May, the wholesale prices they dropped by 3.48%. So wholesale price index remains in deflationary zone for a second month in a row on high base. Economists they know that apart from the base effects, there has been a sequential decline in the wholesale prices on a seasonally adjusted basis. So that's good that inflation is cooling down. So talking about the US monetary policy recent announcement, there was a meeting yesterday. So US Fed holds the interest rates. So this signals more hikes ahead. So right now they have not changed the policy rate, but in a way it is signaling that there might be more hikes in the interest rates ahead. So that is really a cause of concern. So right now this was expected. But despite elevated inflation, they have taken this decision. So those while indicating another sharp increase could be needed before year end. So after 10 straight increases since 2022 March, the Fed opted to hold the benchmark lending rate between 5 to 5.25%. So we are seeing that unemployment is close to the record lows, but inflation still remains stubbornly above the target level of 2% for US. So Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India says that you need to report the cybersecurity incidents on time. So it has directed all the entities that come under its purview to scrupulously adhere to the provisions related to reporting the cybersecurity incidents. So right now we are not having one single law in India to deal with cybersecurity issues. But yes, definitely we need them because India is the most populous country. And then with this technological revolution, the people owning smartphones, the easy access to internet. So all of that basically is pointing towards that definitely we need to have one proper framework in order to deal with such types of incidents. Coming to the Mint newspaper, so keep your eyes on the road. Why crashes they still persist? So here we have the data. Risky routes in 2021 road accidents caused deaths of 1.5 lakh people in India, while another 3,71,000 they were injured. So number of road accidents cases that were reported, you can see there's decline compared to 2019 level, but still it remains at high level, which is around 4 lakhs. This was the number of cases which were reported. Then having a look at the figures which were killed and they got injured. So the number of people who got injured, in a way we can say that has fallen compared to the levels of 2019, but compared to 2020 it has gone up again. And obviously the number of people who died because of the road accidents, even that is increased. So what more is needed to ensure road safety? So what are the main reasons behind these accidents? So overspeeding and the plain bad driving are the two biggest reasons for accidents in the country. where we see nearly 85% of the incidents as well as fatalities. So nearly 60% of the road accidents, they happen in rural parts of the country. So national highways that account for only 2% of the country's total road length accounts for 24% of the accidents. So we need to ensure more safety on national highways and in the rural parts of the country. So every fourth accident in the country involves a person driving or riding a vehicle without a license. So even this area needs more focus. And most accidents and fatalities, they are caused by two-wheelers. So even their safety needs to be taken into account. So what has been done to improve the things so far? So major focus area has been to identify and rectify the dark spots on highways. Then government has spent over rupees 40,000 crores on this thing. New highways being built. They have passageways for the locals and cameras. They are also being installed for the law enforcement so that there is no like incidences of overspeeding. Investments are being made into the driver training institutes also, while the process of issuing the driving licenses, that is also being upgraded. So for cars, the government has mandated 2 airbags as the standard, and it is increasing it to 6 alongside a star rating system for safety. So these are some of the measures which we are working upon right now. So why are these steps not working? Because the numbers shows it very clearly. So lack of coordination between various arms of the government, that is one of the problems. Use of electronic surveillance is tardy right now. Only 4 states, they have acted proactively on it so far. And the Union Ministry, he has also flagged the obsession with cutting the cost of building highways at the cost of safety. So a big focus on car users that account for 16% of fatalities. They comes at the cost of two-wheeler riders and pedestrians. Coming to Financial Express newspapers, so here we see big tech firms, they need more government oversight. Minister says that safe harbor rules, that also needs a relook. So we have like discussed this thing before, it's not something new that we're taking up. So he said that Twitter files expose reinforces the need for the world, including India, to have very clear guardrails and do's and don'ts. And the world is looking to India's leadership because we are in the way approaching this new tech regulations in a correct manner. So it's there. We have seen WPI inflation plunges to 91 months low. So it is basically going into the disinflationary zone. You can see it is in the negative territory. And CPI is also declining. It is also nearing towards its target level of 4%. So that's there. So we need to work upon quality in terms of domestic production. So government, in consultation with the footwear industry, has decided not to extend the deadline for complying with the mandatory quality standards, which will come into force on 1st of July. So E20 petrol pumps to cross 1,000 soon. So ethanol 20, basically E is ethanol. So petrol blended with 20% ethanol. So the number of petrol pumps, they've gone up, or they are soon going to cross 1,000. So here, the Union Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas says that we announced that E20 blended petrol will be available at 100 retail outlets, and it's already available at 600 outlets, and at the rate at which we are going before, long 1,000 retail outlets will be selling E20. So you need to know about more like applications where ethanol it can be used, and what are the raw materials which can be used. So that's much more important. And in financial year 24, windfall tax kitty may fall amid the softer crude prices. So here you need to have clarity about the windfall taxes, under what situation it is basically used by the government. So the windfall tax, it will continue as a safeguard against abnormal price movement. Mind the word abnormal price movement. So tax rate is zero since May 15. There is no plan to withdraw this policy as of now. And currently, the windfall taxes on the domestically produced crude and export of the petrol and diesel or the jet fuel, they are at nil. So as we're talking about the quality of production for the footwear industry, so the footwear made from leather and other materials quality control order of 2022, it requires the manufacturers to establish the testing laboratories and obtain a license. So like you can go through this order in a little more detail because definitely this is an important aspect which impacts every single person. So this is like a part of your common life. So such type of things, they can be asked in the exam as well. So Global Alliance, it should promote solar projects in Africa. So this topic, India-Africa relationship and coordination and cooperation, what steps India is taking, it is taking in African continent. So that's definitely an important topic. So we need to help the countries which need green funds, and the economically strong countries will find the renewable energy fund themselves, while the economically weak countries would need the green funds. So the Power Minister, he has urged the International Solar Alliance to promote grid-scale solar energy projects in Africa and also set up a de-risking mechanism apart from making available the green funds for such products. So you can find out more about like International Solar Alliance, its headquarters, and definitely this was initiated by India. We have talked about the stock limits on wheat. So government could have cut the import duty to boost the supplies. That can be another measure which can be taken, but here we are just talking about, we just talked about the stock limit imposition on wheat stock. So what are the current financial risks globally? So this has been discussed by the G20 panel, and basically financial risk and the vulnerabilities, fighting the inflation. So the macroeconomic impact of food and energy insecurity and their implications for the global economy, as well as macroeconomic risks stemming from climate change and transition paths. These were discussed. Coming to Indian Express newspaper for today. So here, so Mayawati as the chief minister, brother and wife got 261 flats at 46% discount as per audit. It flags the fraudulent sale. So in 2010, Logix, it got land cleared 2 months after the agreement with the couple and their advance was transferred to the related parties. So such types of things, they keep coming up. So 3 years after the Gulban, so LSE infrastructure, true presence, and the logistics that has been ramped up. So the map is important. Here is the Depsang Plains located. Here we have the Daulat Beg Oldie. Here we have Galwan, which is written in red. So Leh, Darpuk, Hot Springs. This is the Ladakh region. This is Jammu and Kashmir. You need to know about the location of the Aksai Chin region. So Siachen Glacier, all are like different. And the important topics from the perspective of the map work. We have talked about the Uniform Civil Code and the law commissions. Coming to the editorial page, so here we have Worldly Wise saying that you never look what worse luck your bad luck has saved you from. So, an very tricky statement. I'll repeat it again. You never know what worse luck your bad luck has saved you from. Okay. So here, CAP does not fit stock holding limits on wheat amid the estimates the record crop send mixed signals, and it raises questions. Obviously, like on the one side, we're saying that we are having a record like output expectations or the estimates, and on the other side we are like the government has issued guidelines to for imposed limits on the stock holding. So if we are having adequate amount of supply, so why these limits on the stocks? So this is the point that is being raised over here. So here recently released the World Bank's Logistic Performance Index Report 2023. It has brought encouraging news for Indian ports as well as for the country's logistics sector. So we have moved up to 22nd rank in the global rankings on international shipments category from the 44th position in 2014. So moreover, the country, it has also secured the 38th rank on this index. So the reason behind this vastly improved performance is the substantial reduction in the dwell time at the Indian ports, and this has reached an optimum level of apps about 3 days only, as compared to 4 days in countries like UAE and South Africa, 7 days in US and 10 days in Germany. So we are at 3 days. So India has done well in another parameter that measures the port operational efficiency. So the country's average turnaround time is of only 0.9 days, is among the best in the world. So this achievement is the result of the large investments which we have done, which the government is doing in the upgradation of the infrastructure in terms of ports, the shipping sector in last few years. And there has been a consistent focus on improvements in the port's efficiency and productivity through reforms, induction of new technologies, greater thrust on public-private partnership, and an overall commitment to the ease of doing business. So capacity at the 12 major ports in the country has increased from 871 million metric tons in 2015 to 1,617 million metric tons. So when we talk about the 12 major ports, you need to know about them, their exact location. So the focus on decarbonization in the maritime sector, along with the Panch Amrit commitments of the government, has reflected in the port sector as well. Then we have Harit Sagar Green Port Guidelines that have been issued by the government, is another important step further in this direction. Then efficiency of ports, it has received a boost with the launch of the National Logistics Portal Marine, which is a single window digital platform for all the stakeholders, including those engaged in cargo services, carrier services, and banking and financial services, and the government and regulatory agencies. We have Sagar Setu app, which facilitates the seamless movement of goods and services. So Center, it has also undertaken several key policies and legislative reforms also. So this includes the Major Port Authorities Act of 2021, which grants greater autonomy to the major ports. Then we have Marine Aids to Navigation Act of 2021 that provides for increased safety and efficiency in the vessel traffic services and training and certification. Then we have the Indian Vessels Act, which brings uniformity in the law and standardized provisions. And we are like also in the process of replacing the Indian Sports Act of 1908 with a piece of legislation that is in tune with the present day requirements. So we have like PM Gati Shakti program as well. So that has not been mentioned here. We have talked about the legislative steps that have been taken by the government. So you can, just search about them a little more in detail, their important features, because yes, no doubt, this is a very important topic. Moving forward. So here, next up. Coming to the explained page, so we have talked about CBI and the general consent, the general things about that. So report says the super rich, they are leaving India. So why the wealthy, they migrate? So China is ahead of India. in terms of this thing. So, according to the Henley Private Wealth Migration Report, India is expected to witness a net outflow of 6,500 ultra rich people. So, technical term for these ultra rich is high net worth individuals, and it refers to those with an investable wealth of $1 million or more. So, in rupee terms, that threshold means rupees 8.2 crores or more. So investable wealth refers to an individual's net investable assets like property, cash, equities minus your liabilities. So India's likely net outflow in 2023 will make it the second worst performer on losing these high net worth individuals after China. So the top five destinations for these net inflows of the high net worth individuals is projected that they are either migrating to Australia, UAE, Singapore, USA, and Switzerland. And on the flip side, the largest net outflows of millionaires, it is expected from China, India, UK, Russia, and Brazil. So why do the very rich, they are leaving the country? So the CEO of Henley and Partners has said that affluent families, they're extremely mobile and their transnational movements, it can provide an early warning signal in terms of country's economic outlook because of like a poor economic conditions in a country. That might be one of the reasons of out migration and then future country trends. So that is one possibility. Then, like the proverbial canary in the coal mine, they alert us to dangers that may lie ahead as they are more sensitive to potential threats to their wealth, and usually they have the resources to take a corrective course of action to preserve their legacies. So, talking about the grain storage plan of the government and how it would be helping the farmers. So right now we have the food grain storage capacity of 145 million metric tons against the total food production of 311 million metric tons, leaving a gap of 166 million metric tons. So in absence of the sufficient food storage facilities, food grains are sometimes stored in open, which results in damage. So for that, we need a proper grain storage plan and the storage capacity. So India has a storage capacity of 47% of its total food grains production. So at the regional level, only a few southern states, they have the storage capacity of 90%. So what is the world's largest grain storage plan in the cooperative sector? So at present, the multiple government agencies like the Food Corporation of India or the Central Warehouse Corporation, Warehouse Development Regulatory Authority, or the railways and the civil supply departments of states that are involved in the grain management. So under the new plan, the Ministry of Cooperation aims to set up a network of integrated grain storage facilities through the primary agricultural credit societies across the country. And according to the ministry, there are more than 1 lakh PACs which are spread across the country with a huge member base of around or more than 13 crore farmers. So this is one of the reasons why these primary agricultural credit societies network, it has been chosen for this new plan. So there have been definitely budgetary allocations for this thing. And what are the benefits of this plan are much more important for us to know. So according to the government, the plan, it is multi-pronged. So it aims to address not just the shortage of the agricultural storage infrastructure in the country by facilitating the establishment of godowns, but it also like undertakes various other activities like functioning as the procurement centers for the state agencies, serving as the fair price shops also, and setting up the custom hiring centers, setting up the common processing units, including the assaying, sorting, grading units for agricultural produce. So other benefits would be that it would reduce the post-harvesting losses to the farmers. It would bring down the food grain handling and transportation cost. And farmers, they would have choice to sell their produce depending on the market conditions and not be forced into the distress sale. So these are different ways how this plan would be helping the farmers. So there's sharp slide in India's remittance inflows on the OECD slowdown. So because these advanced economies, they are slowing down, so obviously the remittances inflow that has been impacted. So after growing over 24% to post a record high level of $111 billion in 2022, the remittance flows to India are expected to grow by only 0.2% this year. And remittances are likely to get affected by the slower growth in these OECD countries, limiting the employment and wage gains for the migrants. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining us in the today's analysis session. I hope the topics that we've discussed today are clear to you. And do subscribe to our channel, if you haven't, and also like this video. Thank you so much.